almost nothing can go wrong, right? It's completely. So what we have that application, and if you're a member, you get a push notification when a webinar starts. So it's almost nothing can go wrong. Right? Here we go. So what we have. Sorry, let me.
Sorry. Yeah.
Switch on that YouTube thing. And it's actually a bit complex to link stuff. You think it's pretty easy to stream everything to YouTube, but it's always a bit annoying. So now we're good. So they get this push notification and they can just click and then they're in. And those people you will not see because they don't show in the Zoom account. So there could be one, could be a million, but you don't know.
Okay. You just tell me when I can start the presentation.
Yeah. So
how does it go?
Yeah. So I'll make you the host starting in 4 minutes. Just to put it in the chat.
Okay.
So I'll make you the host and I'll do an introduction when it's 10 o'clock. But I'll be very brief because I'll hand over to you in a few seconds. But let me make you the host, and that means that you are in full control of everything. Sure. And it also means, of course, that I'm not in control, right? So if there's something wrong, then you have to make me the host, and I can.
Okay. So just once again, the questions I will be able to read them on the side, right?
I will post them to you because
that's what I understood. Okay.
Yeah. So don't bother. You, of course, you if you have time, you can read. But I find it pretty difficult to do the session and read at the same time.
Yeah.
So don't worry. I'll post them to you when the time is right.
Yeah. So I might forget it also.
It's impossible. The first time when I tried, I have this. I'm doing a couple of those webinars myself.
Yeah.
And when the team said, "Shall I join to help you ask?" Nah, I'm fine, right? And then I realized after like 40 minutes of speaking, there's like 6 million questions on the chat, and I couldn't read them. So there was no way I could recover from that. So now we always have the standby person who can get the right questions.
Sure. Yeah. So we'll always learn from our mistakes. So.
Yeah, that's a mistake you'll make once, and then you realize you need to read through like 6 weeks of WhatsApp messages, right? On the chat, it's like, okay, where am I going to start in a live session, right? So everybody's waiting for you to address their question. No, but I think with this topic, it's going to be a bit easier because the session I'm doing is a metaverse. In metaverse, everybody goes completely crazy. It's because it's so vague and it's so much marketing stuff. So. But this is, I think this should be more tangible.
Okay.
So if you want, you can share, right? So everything is ready. So you can share your slides, share your screen, everything should work.
Yeah, sure. Just, okay, let's do this. Let me just, I don't know.
There's a green share screen button.
Wait, I just want to share. Yeah.
That looks fantastic. Right.
Okay, but I don't know. This is the keynote. Maybe I should better share the PDF, I guess.
Doesn't matter, right? It's are you fine sharing the PDF with the students after the presentation?
Yeah, I'll just ask my bosses for confirmation, but I guess it's
it's probably helpful, right? Yeah.
Yeah, it should be fine.
Great. So the intro I'll do is I'll quickly say, yeah, I'm not going to say too much about you, but do you, by the way, do you say light on or do you say Lighton AI?
It depends on people, but basically you say Lighton.
Lighton AI. So I'll say that, but I'm also going to say that they can get a certificate for joining, which is typical. Hey, it's 10 o'clock, so let's get going, right? So for people dialing in, welcome. Good morning if you're in Amsterdam or Europe, and good afternoon if you're in India, and I think very late evening if you're joining from the US. So wherever you are, welcome and great to have you with us. So we have Olga from Lighton.ai, if I pronounce it correctly, focuses on NLP, natural language processing, one of the more interesting topics nowadays. If you're listening in, I think a couple of notes. If you have a question, put it on the chat. For Olga, to make your life easy, Olga, I'll collect the questions and post them to you at the right time in your presentation. And if you want a certificate for joining, which I know some of you do, then please email me directly after the webinar and I'll make sure you have a certificate with your name on it. With that said, Olga, over to you.
Yeah. Hello, everyone. So nice to meet you. So I'm Olga Lopushansky, a Muse product manager at Lighton. Basically today I will be presenting, I will be doing a general overview of large language models, because this is what we do at Lighton, and presenting a little bit at the end the specificity of the product I'm in charge of, Muse API, which deals with these large language models. So I am not an engineer, I'm a product manager. So I apologize for the talk not being too technical, and I hope I will be able to answer all of your questions. Well, at least I will do my best. Okay, so first very general slide. Maybe everyone's already familiar with NLP, but basically it's, well, the fascinating idea of teaching machines to speak our language. The process is really intricate, complicated, technical, but it can boil down to a very simple scheme. So we first need to prepare the data. By this, we mean that we need to gather huge amounts of data, which most often need to be labeled and need to be filtered, after which we need to build an algorithm. And this is the point where we have two choices. So we have the first one, which was used at the beginning, which was the basis of the AI, of the text treatment AI, and which was the rule-based approach, in which basically you handcrafted the rules for your model to follow. It means that you had to work with linguists and people who understood how language works, how it is built, and basically the more complete your rule database was, the better your model could respond afterwards. And then there was this great revolution, which was the machine learning approach, which consisted into not giving tons and tons of rules to a machine, but basically once you gave it the data, based on statistical methods, on statistical models, you let the model out there all alone learn from the data you gave it and understand on its own how your language works. This seems like real magic, but it worked. So this is where large language models come in. Before that, just a quick word about the language model, which is basically a statistical model on word sequences. Okay, this is a very, very general scheme. It's much more complicated than this, but basically in this case, what we do is that we assign weights to words in a context. I mean, not just basically which words are the most used in the vocabulary, but the model, which has seen lots and lots and lots of data, will have seen, for example, for a huge amount of time, the phrase "once upon a time." He will see a bit less, or much less, "once upon a book," "once upon a girl," and the other things with what you can think of. And then he will assign weights, which are like percentages or probabilities, to each of the word that should come after "once upon a." So, for example, if you want to generate some text and you type in for your model as an entry "once upon a," there is a big probability that he will then give you the word time. Okay, then you can always adjust the way the model chooses so that it can get more creative and choose a less probable word to follow. But these are the details we'll be seeing afterwards in the demo. So Now, what about the large language model in this context? So the large language models are basically these models based on the probability and statistics, but the revolution about them is that they're trained on huge amounts of data, which can be basically bulk or curated data. So always the better your database is, I mean, the more diverse it is, the larger it is, the better it is filtered, and the better your model will be. So the other novelty is that, which we have seen with GPT-3, is that the data does not necessarily need to be labeled. For example, before GPT-3, you could have, most models were trained on labeled data, which meant that you labeled, for example, a huge amount of pictures of cats with cats and a huge amount of pictures of dogs with dogs. And then the model, after seeing all these labeled pictures, could identify a picture of cat as being that of a cat. Now the model is capable enough to perform this identification throughout his learning on his own. So there is less work to be done beforehand. And then the other part is the huge amount of parameters you give it. The parameters are basically the things that adjust, that model adjusts during its training on the data. So the more parameters you have, we think that the more capable your model is. But there are several recent works that show that there is a limit beyond which the capacities of model start to grow slower. Yeah, it will still be more capable, but there is a let's say a suitable ratio between the number of parameters and the capacities of model that can be found. Okay, so these models have astonishing capabilities. The first and most important of which probably is the fact that they understand instructions in natural language, and they can perform a large variety of tasks based on that instruction. So instructions, I did not put the word here, but basically maybe you all have heard it and know it. It's the prompt you give it. So it can be either a text you enter and you want the model to continue, or a true instruction, like, for example, write an email, or an instruction with several examples you want the model to follow. And what is really amazing is that the model is able to perform a task to understand what you want from him, even if he has not been trained to perform specifically these kind of tasks. I'll show you later on in the demo how a model based on just several examples or on an instruction and some information is able to do exactly what you want it to do. So these models are called zero or few shots, meaning that they have seen very little or no test like this, like the one you give it at all during its training. So the second thing, which is barely a consequence as the previous one, is the fact that these models are really amazing at imitating the context and the style of the text you give them. And then with these models, you can also go beyond, and now we have seen really astonishing applications of this, can go beyond text, meaning that everything that is directly or indirectly text-based, you can try these models onto, and there are great projects related to protein sequences and DNA, or to computer code, for example, websites that create them, that can be created just by giving instructions in natural language, and things much more far away, more impressive than that. And you also have the image generation, which I have an example here. Maybe if you are passionate by NLP, you have seen that DALL-E 2 of GPT of OpenAI, which based on a prompt generates an image. And basically here, something that I've been shown recently, they have generated this image, which are like people dressed as bears on the moon, based on the prompt teddy bears working on new AI research on the moon in 1980s, which is really amazing. You can try this. You can try this with tool. It's okay. There are competitors, but I must admit they're really great. Okay, so basically, when you train, so for these large language models, basically when you train one, what you're talking about is a foundation model. So you have the high quality data we've been discussing. Then you have to have the extreme scale training, which is one of the hidden difficulties of the process. So the scheme is really easy. It seems to have not too many steps, but each step contains a huge amount of work. And this is the difficult part, because the training of these models, of the very large models, requires weeks of training on supercomputer. So this is expensive stuff, but aside from that, these supercomputers are really hard to get access to. And there are not as many of those as we would like. For example, in Europe, we have the Zhanze on which Lighton has trained its models, and we are really lucky to have access to it. And GPT-3 has more facilities with that, since they have access, more like on a more free basis to a supercomputer. So once you have your foundation model, well, okay, suppose you have overcome all the difficulties with the training and you have a foundation model and you're really happy with it. So the foundation model is a large language model trained on any kind of data, as much and as diverse, but always high quality. And then there is one more step you can take. Okay, you can use it just like that, or you can also adapt it to apply to different end tasks. Okay, so this, as I said, you can just give it a proper instruction with a few examples for it to follow, so that it can understand what to do. But you can also use fine-tuning and prompt tuning, which are, sorry. You can also use fine-tuning and prompt tuning, which are techniques that allow you to basically specialize your model for a certain task by adding a layer of specific information. For example, okay, these are two different techniques, and then the one that is most used is the fine-tuning technique. The fine-tuning, okay, I won't say it's really, I'm afraid to say some stupid things, but normally it's taking the weights of a model that has already seen a certain type of data and using it for training model on similar types of data. So this is not training a model from scratch, so not building it from the ground, from zero. You're already using something, you have to make it better. The prompt tuning is like freezing your model and adding a layer based on feeding it with examples for a specific task or for a specific vocabulary. So it's a bit different. And what we do at Lighton is precisely the prompt tuning. Okay. But as always, there is a problem. There are several problems with that, as I said, like the difficulties of training, the difficulties of building a database. But there is a more general problem. There is a very rich ecosystem for the large language models nowadays. So there are companies, we have the impression that there are companies all over, like there is Lighton, which is us. There is Hugging Face, there's OpenAI, of course, there's Cohere, and these companies are basically all over the world. You have the impression they're all over the world. Some of them are in Europe, so say that, well, it's very democratic. We have it everywhere, everyone has access to it, but it's not as simple as that, because these models are basically, the really large, the real capable models are basically trained mostly in English, and now more recently in Chinese and in Korean. So basically they are natively available to only 25% of the world population. If you want to use these powerful models, until recently, you had to pass through translation. But translating is will never give you the quality that a natively trained model would give you. And okay, so the question, which I'm not asking here, but I'm answering already, is that we can go beyond English. It has not been done because most of the companies, in spite of what it appears to be, are related to American groups. And so they're basically interested in English market and in English. But if we want to, we can train models in most of the existing languages, because basically what we need, as I said earlier, is the data. And we have enough data for most of the European languages, and even languages like Indonesian. And now Lighton is also training a model in Arabic. So this is our big challenge of the moment. And we not only we can go beyond English and train models in other languages, but we should do that. Because, as I said, natively trained models offer a better sense of the language than the best translation that you can ever get. For example, okay, this is an example our engineers adore, the French ones. So you have in France that really famous tourist site, which is Mont Saint-Michel in Normandy. In Normandy, it says GPT-3. But actually, Mont Saint-Michel is in Brittany. Okay, so this is this was not very clear so it has been a subject of many disputes in France, and finally, so as it is just at the border between the two of them, it was not very clear. But in France, one would never say that it's in Normandy. Okay, and for example, the models we train at Lighton know that it's in Britain. Okay, so it's this problem of monopolies in English and Chinese languages, which we are coming up and trying to solve, and are already solving. So Lighton offers the first multilingual API, which I am representing. And this API offers the VLM4 models, which is VLM4 as opposed to GPT-3. And so we have already trained the models in French, Italian, Spanish, German, and English. And now, as I was saying, we are training the largest model in Arabic. So the French model we have trained is the largest model natively trained in French available on the market. And we're really, really proud of it. And the other models for Italian, for example, and Spanish, these are basically the only models that exist natively trained in these two languages. They are smaller than the French one, but we ambition to train bigger models soon enough, as soon as we can get access to a supercomputer and as soon as we can gather more quality data. For the German models, there are several other enterprises offering one. There is just one that is natively trained, which is Aleph Alpha. But basically, we are pioneers in this domain. And beyond the fact that this is interesting from the scientific point of view and from a commercial point of view, we are happy to participate to democratizing these large language models as this is like the new wave in the AI, and we would like it to be available to everyone in their native language as soon as possible, so that everyone can benefit of the huge advantages they have. Okay, so I put here two more things of the savoir-faire of Lighton, which do not concern me anymore, but concern our engineers, just to say how great our team is. So we are one of the, as I said, we trained for French model and the Italian, Spanish, and German ones on our own. So we have gathered on our own the database, and we have supervised the training on our own. So this is thanks to our internal pipeline for extreme scale models, and we're one of the few enterprises to have one on our own, to be able to train a model, build a model up from the ground and train it from scratch. And so our engineers are involved in the working group in Big Science, which is now working on the 176 multilingual model. And with this helps us. So this really helps us with our own research and speeding up what we are doing at Lighton.
Can I ask a couple of questions before we go into
yeah, sorry.
So the data underneath, right? Because I'm curious, and I fully concur that all of these language models so far, that English is the dominant one, right?
Yeah.
And for the English models, I think it's Wikipedia, it's Reddit kind of data that we use. But so how do you guys collect the data, and what kind of sources do you use? And if you can't say it, then don't say it. But curious.
No, actually I can say it. Maybe I should have made a slide, but I was so afraid that I will take too much time and not have time for the demos. Okay, so the way we collect data, basically, it's everything. Okay, we use for our models data that is in free access. So basically, we first make a list of all data we can think of, for which we do not need to ask for permission for access, or which we can take directly from internet. So basically, we take, for example, scientific articles from which are in open access. We take subtitle basis. We take all the literature we can get that is in open access. To which we have access. We try to take also technical literature. We also tried like poems, songs. We are looking into. We even took some kitchen recipes. Okay, we haven't scrolled Marmiton, but we are thinking about that. Like find a prompt tuning a model for kitchen use, and then okay, we are taking the information from forums. But okay, every time there is also this sensitive question that with the privacy of data, and we have to make sure each time that we do not take data for which we need specific permission. And then these data need to be filtered, because the input, as I said before, the prompt you give the model, like the instruction, the examples, or the text, is really important. But the data you train it on will be very important for output too. So it needs to be as free of all sorts of unappropriate language as possible. And we try to do that too.
But there may still be, because I'm remembering that the chatbot example that Microsoft had, or the classic example of the I think it was called the chatbot, where they got a lot of emotional things inside these things. And we had exactly the same. So we trained a Q&A chatbot, which happened to give quite some emotional answers at times that we didn't really like. So are you guys filtering out those emotions in any way to make sure that there are not very strong opinions on certain items that are maybe existing on Reddit or some other chain?
No, we are not going into that kind of precision. I think it's pretty difficult to do it with a foundation model. But theoretically, this can be done if you want to specialize a model for a specific task. And for example, if you want to think of something of a chatbot that would answer in a specific way, we can do that. Okay, another way of dealing with it is with the parameters. So you'll be showing in the demo. We could, for example, lower the temperature so that the model be very, very factual and the less emotional possible. But this will create other problems, which will be that maybe you won't get you will get really like basic answers with no interesting, something very trivial. But no, we do not we do not have the means to do that entirely for a foundation model.
Okay, and the last one, that supercomputer that you mentioned, which is quite fascinating. So why are you guys using that and not just TPUs on Google Cloud, for example?
Well, I think that this is a more technical question. Like, this was the kind of question I was afraid of. As far as I can understand, for our models, the way you train these big models, the supercomputers are what is suited best, like the Jonzé supercomputer. But I don't think I can give you more precision on that technical part.
And do you know how long it takes to train the model? Just out of curiosity.
Yeah, that I do, luckily. So if everything goes smoothly, if there are no problems. For example, for a 6 billion model we have for French, it took us about 2 weeks to train it.
Yeah. Okay. So
for a smaller model, for a smaller one like 1.5, it takes a little bit less, like 1 week, maybe a bit less.
But the 176 billion parameter model, of course, will take many weeks, right?
Sorry?
The new 176 billion multilingual model will take 2 months or so.
That'll take more time. Yes, exactly.
Yeah. That's pretty insane. Okay, that's it for my side for now. So let's continue. Thanks.
Okay. I just have a question here. From Naga. Can these models understand the language even if there are some errors in framing the sentence? Okay, so the thing is that yes, they can. Depends, once again, it depends on how capable they are and how you've trained them. But the really large models are capable not only to understand if there is something, like not only to understand an instruction if it is written in a non-proper language, but even if you use, for example, if you shorten words or you use abbreviations, or if you use like very familiar words, like sometimes you do when you chat on internet. We tested that with client review. We took real client reviews from internet, and you know how people write on internet. There are often mistakes. Sometimes they do not mark the end of a sentence, etc. And the model can still sense the general. He can do a sentiment analysis, so know that if the review is positive or negative, and he can answer it accordingly. So yes, they can still understand language, but as I said before, I emphasize the fact that the better your input is, the better your prompt is, the more it is accurate, precise, the richer your text is, and the more examples you give it, and the better your output will be.
When you have a battery warning on your screen, just
Sorry?
You have a battery warning on your screen, just so you know.
I know.
Because if we lose you, then I don't know enough about NLP to.
Don't worry, you won't lose me. I'll just. I was thinking about this for the past 5 minutes. Okay.
Let's continue. And good that we see a question. So if there are more questions, guys, then anytime jump in.
So now I have talked. My boss doesn't tell me that I did not talk enough about Lighton and Muse API. So now I'll be doing that, and in my demo too. So for these models I was talking about, so or our 5 large language models, we have now a dedicated platform Muse at muse.lighton.ai. Where everyone can try them. It's in free access. So basically, for the ones who tested OpenAI, basically it works in the same way, just that here you have them natively trained in 5 languages. So you have a playground where you have all the models with some skills, and you also have all the parameters you can adjust, so you can play with it. Okay, the subscription plan we have a free plan for developers, but basically it's for all people who want to test it and try and see what it looks like and how it works. And you can also dig into the guides we made. So we tried to make them as accessible as possible and as detailed as possible, so you can read everything on prompt design, on adjusting parameters. You have various use cases that will help you adjust your parameters and your prompt to get the best output possible. And we also describe a bit of, more general, more technical stuff for people who are interested to go in more in depth in the functioning of these large language models. So once again, for everyone, you can go and try it for free right away. So I can only encourage you to do that. So everything I will be showing you in the demo, you can just reproduce it on your own on the platform and try your own examples, and we'll be more than happy to have your feedback. And if you can share your examples, your interesting examples, or your experience on the community or directly with me, we'll be happy with that, because it helps us grow and improve our products, to know what people who try it think about it. Okay, here are just quickly some of our use cases. So currently we have several, these are just several people we are working with, several of our customers we know. So these are off-platform customers, that's why we know them personally. So we are doing some SEO and copywriting, which is like maybe the most basic and direct use for these large language models, like text generation. For all kinds of type of text. We're also doing what I told you, a project with the Beyond Text, which is the website construction. And basically this is giving instruction in natural language, and the model turns them to code. And the website is constructing as you talk to your computer. And so we also worked on language assessment. So this is basically evaluating the language level of a candidate who passes a language test. So we're doing it for English and French, but that's why we ambition to create larger models and in more languages, because basically it can be done for any language. And this is our more recent, very ambitious project for, I was talking about, the largest language model in the world for modern Arabic. And for this, we are working with a research unit in Abu Dhabi. Okay, so if for now there are no questions, then it's demo time. I'll show you now what's behind the curtain, how it works. And if you have any questions during the demo, don't hesitate to jump in. Okay, I'll just have to find the demo. Okay. Let me just run it once again. Okay, so first one I wanted to show you, which also impresses always people. So it's the one for copywriting, which I was talking about just right away. So it's the SEO copywriting, the most direct use for this model. And here you have a copywriting for an Instagram ad. So this is what they are giving here is more or less code, but don't worry. If you go to Muse.ai and if you are allergic to code, you won't need all this, because you have a nice interface and you have all this hidden behind the interface. So the prompt here is, as I was saying earlier, the kind of prompt which is an instruction with a description. So you tell the model to write an Instagram ad for a luxury hotel in Philippines and with world-class diving. And then you just type in Instagram ad. So all this is your prompt. So the model, from what you give it here, understands that he has to write on his own an ad in the Instagram format. So now let's look a bit into the parameters, which I haven't talked about in my presentation. So this is, besides the prompt, this is what helps you adjust your output. So you have the temperature, which will tell the model to be more or less creative. So here, basically, it can be any value, but normally you would like it between 0 and 1, 1 being pretty creative. If you go beyond 1, the model, there are fair chances that the model goes wild and too creative. So the number of tokens here gives you the length of the output you want. And then there is something that we also offer on our sites and which is described in our guide. It's our several functionalities that help you guide the generation. So this is one which is called word biases, and which allows you to tell the model, I want this word, this word, this word to be in my output. So here, for example, you tell him, I want the word luxury and the word scuba in my ad. Okay, but things are not that simple, because once you tell him this, you also have to tell him that you don't need to put these words 3 times in every sentence, because he might tend to do that to please you. So you tell him that they shouldn't appear too often, with a functionality that's called a function that's called frequency penalty. So here you put 0.5, basically it's between 0 and 1 in our case. So then you just run this thing and you see what appears. If my internet is slow. Okay, so here, where's the little robot? You have your Instagram ad. So the model has invented some private villas and a restaurant, a world-class restaurant. We don't know if you have things like that, but you told him to be creative, so he is. So if you read it, you see that it's a really an ad that suits perfectly what you ask him to do. You see the word scuba right here, and you see the word luxury right here. If you don't like several things, or if something does not really fit your offer, you just adjust 2 or 3 words and you're ready to go for Instagram. For example, we can try to lower a bit the temperature, for example, put it to 0.5 and see what happens in this case. Just to tell you that parameters are important. Okay, and here, okay, you get something that is not as good as that. So
I think they're both pretty solid, actually.
Yeah, but the first one was more coherent and more how to say more refined. But yeah, well, it's a large language model. It has to be capable even with a low temperature. But just to say that if one time, I mean, if you one time you press enter and you get a generation that does not really suit you, don't despair. You can just adjust 1 or 2 parameters, like reread the guides and start all over, adjust a bit your prompt and all. Okay, so second part is the marketing review. So marketing review is the other type of prompt I was talking about, which is instruction plus examples. So here your prompt, so this is your instruction, answer client reviews, and these are your 2 examples. So review, answer, and review, answer. In the third one, you just give the review and you type the word answer and you wait for the model to answer. So here you just have a very basic answer, thank you for your review. So compared to the others, why would it be so short? Well, it might be short because here the temperature we put is 0.6. 0.6 is a pretty low temperature, as I said, and it does not let the model to be too creative. So it will just give you something really trivial and basic. We also use here another function, which is stop words. For example, if you do not want, as before, to generate more than 1 sentence, or if you want your generation to look complete, directly complete, not for your model not to stop at the middle of a word, you should use stop words like a point or an exclamation mark. And so here he stops just at the end of this short sentence. So we can try to put a higher temperature and see what it gives. Okay, see with the bit we go to 0.8 in temperature, and already you have a much more furnished answer, a longer one and a more explicit one, which looks more like an answer that a real human would make to a client. Okay.
Okay. So, in your awareness, are companies already doing this in app stores? So is some of the stuff that you see there? Because, for example, so we have an app, and I see quite some reviews that I'm not 100% sure are written by human beings. So maybe people are actually using it at scale, or companies are using it to respond.
Okay, actually, this kind of automated reviews have been used for some time, but many companies. Okay, I think that the states, for example, are ahead of us. But I will speak for the French market because I know in France, many people are using BERTs, so which are much smaller and less capable than large language models. And in that case, so the answers sometimes they're not bad, but you can see straight ahead that they're not generated by a human. For large language models, what is really great, maybe sometimes on one review you might see something strange or inappropriate, and you might say, okay, a person would not have written that. But basically, most of the time, statistically speaking, it becomes hard to tell if it's a human or not. Much harder than with a BERT.
Very interesting. Yeah.
Okay, so here you also have now what we also can do is Q&As. So for Q&As, you have open questions. For example, like here, what is a statistical model? So this is an example made by our engineers, so it's an engineering example. And so here you have, like before, no instruction in this case, just an example, question answer in the first place, and second question with just written answer. So the second question was, well, how does a neural network work? And the answer is pretty coherent, maybe not the best one you can give, but not bad at all. And then you also have the Q&As using log props. Or log props is something that allows you to choose between several, like in Who Wants to Be a Millionaire, to choose between several possibilities. So this is mostly a factual. So it might seem a factual skill, but it's more than that, because the model has to understand the question. Is not just the same formulation all the time, like the president of France is 2010 is. It can be different questions, and each time the model has to understand what the question is. So it's not just choosing, mechanically choosing. It's about understanding first what is asked from him. Okay, for now we're not really doing chatbots, but we have an example of chatbot, which is basically working just like the open Q&A here, or like question answering. Then you also have the classification skill. So here we put classification for companies. So this is really an open-ended classification. I mean, we do not give the model categories. We give him a pretty low temperature so that he stays factual, and we give him some example and an instruction. So these are the examples, and for each one we give 2 categories, and at the end we want him to give categories for Caterpillar, and so he gives construction and mining. So this is just the things our foundation model gets from his training. So from training database, and from the capacities gained from training, from his knowledge, and from his understanding of what is asked from him. Okay, we have been just discussing this yesterday, and I know that some companies doing in GPT-3 are already into this in grammar and syntax correction. So you can also use these models, but basically you would maybe need to fine-tune them or build a specific model. You can use them for correcting grammar, and once again, more than that, you can also use them for correcting your text in general. For example, what I mean by that is paraphrasing. For example, if you write a phrase really quickly, you can use this kind of tools, which are really powerful. We don't do that for now, but we would like to do that in the future. Like correct grammar, correct the general structure of the sentence, put all the stopping, like the points, the exclamation mark, the commas, etc., etc. So make the perfect text in the perfect English or French or whatever, and in a better way than all the like Grammarly's and the word correct, etc. Okay, so I also have an example. Sorry, this is the only French example I will be showing you, but I wanted to show it to you because I know that everybody. So English is our common language, but this is an example French people love, and but not only French people, because French wine is I hope everybody loves or just considers it to be our French domain of expertise. So here, what we asked the French, this is for the French model. What we asked him is to give a description of wine. So if you know, in France, when you describe a wine, it's like writing a poem. I mean, it's a very specific language. Like, for example, I don't know how it comes in English, but in France you use like the notes of black fruit and spices are delicately mixed in this little red wine from Languedoc. So, I mean, it's not something you would say in normal life. And you give him several examples of this kind of very specific description, like the kind of language you use for wine description. And then you ask him to describe the last bottle. So keep in mind that this model has never been trained to describe wine. So it has been trained just on a large amount of very general data. And now, when you ask him for wine description, okay, what you get here is something really amazing. I have never tasted this wine. I don't really know if it corresponds to this wine in particular, but you get something like his red and sparkling dress with purple reflex is charming and éblouissant. I don't remember how you say. The smell is pure and very balanced, with notes of black fruit and spice. So he has taken some words from previous example he's seen, but basically he's making up something absolutely new. But he's really respecting, like I was saying in my presentation, he's respecting the context and he's respecting the style. And it's really amazing, just from a few descriptions before that. And you can also imagine, I was telling that yesterday to some French people, you can imagine a model fine-tuned or just built specifically for describing wines. This would be the end of all French sommelier. You can imagine that. That would be a catastrophe. Okay, so maybe just one last thing, because I've been really long, I realized, even with my few slides. The summarization. So this is something that would be, in our case, a skill. I'm not using it here as a skill. But on our website, we offer it as a skill. So skill means that we have prompt-tuned the model to this specific task. And if you use it on the website as a skill, your model will better perform summarization than without the skill, as per usual. So here you have a pretty long text on neutron stars. And then what you tell the model, in order for it to understand that it has to sum up, is just TLDR. So we tried that, and it turns out that, this is something you use in forums to say too long, didn't read. So you don't even tell him that he has to make a summary. You just say TLDR. And even this, the model knows what it is. So with TLDR, he makes you just a one-sentence summary of your previous paragraph, which was really amazing. And it works just like it works the same in French, it's a little bit less good for Italian, Spanish, and German, since the models are smaller. But hopefully in the nearest future, we'll put all the European languages on the same level for that. Okay, so I had several other examples, but these are like question answering, more in the same style as question answering. So maybe I'll just finish up here my presentation and just show you a quick glimpse of the site, what the site looks like. So this is the site where you can test everything I've shown you. If you don't want to subscribe right away because you don't have the 5 minutes you need, you can just play around with the sandbox. You can choose the parameters, but here you can choose the languages. And you have several examples from which you can choose in different languages, or you can type your own text. Well, it will be not that good as on Playground, as you cannot adjust the parameters once again, but it can be pretty much fun. And then, then you can subscribe just here, and it only takes a few minutes. Choose the free subscription. So, and enjoy Lighton's VLM4 in English, Spanish, French, Italian, and German.
Nice.
Okay, and thank you for your attention.
Thanks. Okay, can I ask a couple of questions? Thanks for the enlightening presentation. Right? I think it's really great to see all these different use cases of the model. The first one is a bit more philosophical, because when I did my AI online courses a couple of years ago, then technically everything we said about AI, it said, it's technically it's always a niche model, right? The model can classify cats and dogs, or it can predict house prices. But everything is it's not general intelligence. It's just a niche prediction engine. And I think in this case, that is changing a bit, right? So, because this model is trained on a lot of language, and you derive lots of use cases from the same data set, correct?
Exactly. Yeah. I mean that this is the magic of the thing. Like I said, is that based on the statistical algorithms, the model is able to learn and to. It's not labeling the data, but I mean, you don't need to label it for him. But it can learn on its own to distinguish the data and understand who is who. I mean, what is the structure of sentences? Who are cats? Who are dogs? And then, if you trained it on a data which is of good quality and which is sufficient in terms of amount, you can just give him one instruction and several examples, and it will perform your task. But then again, if you want it to be really good at one task, specialized in the task, you need to fine tune it to prompt tune.
Yeah, fair enough. So there's a bit of fine tuning to get to the right level of accuracy.
But really, what is amazing is that it has there is a certain sense of understanding the instructions in natural language, like as if the model, through his learning process, has learned the language, because maybe the instruction formulated in the way you formulate it, he's never seen a phrase like that in his entire training life.
And that general understanding, for me, that's also the most amazing part, right? And then suddenly, because it has many use cases based on the same language understanding.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah. Hey, that ecosystem, because we looked quickly at Lighton, Hugging Face, NVIDIA, etc. But what are the companies next to Lighton that we should follow? So what are the things?
these ones?
These ones. So which ones do you follow, and which ones are most inspiring to follow on LinkedIn or Twitter or wherever?
Well, Lighton, of course.
That's the first one, of course.
Yeah. No, okay. I will stay. So NVIDIA, with whom we are working, our engineers at least are working in partnership. So we're part of their program. Mm-hmm. Okay, I'm not talking about OpenAI. Of course, it should be followed because it's doing really great things. Then you have okay, it's not here, but you also have Alpha Aleph, who are working on the largest German models, which is not finished yet. But it's interesting to see what those people are doing. Mm-hmm. So Hugging Face, yes, because they have an very interesting offer for do-it-yourself in terms of language models. So fine tuning and so they have a large amount of models they offer you and to be able to fine tune. Yeah. So for me, but if you want to keep up to date, you can follow all of them.
Yeah, great. So fantastic to see all these powerful players moving in. Hey, I have a last question for you, and I think it's a question that you are well suited to answer, being in the place where you are, right? So I guess you've seen the developments in the last few years on how this is moving. What do you think we will have in the next 2 years? So if we dial in again 2 years from now, the same concept, what's going to be different?
You mean with large language models?
Yeah.
I don't think I'm the one who's best suited to answer that. If you are asking from the engineering side, I'm not sure what's going to happen next 6 months because things are moving so fast. I just hope that in 2 years we won't have a Skynet or something like that, because it's really amazing the speed at which articles are written and new things are discovered. For example, new techniques like refining the fine-tuning techniques, and for example, articles that explain on how smaller fine-tuned models can outperform the biggest models, like the ones from OpenAI, on several tasks, and the speed at which also new extremely large models are being trained. So I know that now, for example, there is the Google is preparing based on written data it's collecting, because they have access to a tremendous amount of data. They are preparing a model of, I don't remember how many parameters, but like the biggest one, based mainly focused on all the use cases, on business use cases like summaries, text writing, email writing, and things like that. So everything they can collect from things like Google Docs, which is public, they are using. At least that's what has been explained to me. So okay, so this is for the engineering part. I think we'll be pretty far away, especially since Facebook is doing a model of his own too. So all the GAFAM giants are on it. And from the market point of view, I think that France now is a little bit, so European market is a bit, it's a bit behind the American market from this point of view. But I think that these large language models will be, they will be part of our lives in a few years, just like computers at some point were really weird and strange and not used by many people, and now we can't imagine how we can live without them.
Great.
So I think it will be moving pretty fast.
That's a fantastic sentence. There's one question. Can you name that company again that was doing the German language models?
Yeah, Aleph Alpha.
Aleph Alpha. Okay. Could you write it in the chat maybe?
Sure.
Great. No, I fully agree. I think these language models will be part of everyday life and marketing communications and article writing, etc.
Okay.
Yeah, great. Okay. We still spent the full hour. So Olga, thanks so much for being here. The session will be live. I need to upload it to YouTube, so somewhere later today. Olga, if you can double check if it's okay if people get the slides, that
sure.
also be appreciated. I'm going to send it out to everybody listening. If you do want a certificate, please email me and I'll make you have a certificate with your name on it.
Thank you so much for inviting me, and have a nice day, everyone.
Yes, thank you.